Looking over. I'm going to check to make sure that it works. And we are live. Hi, Mighty Blaze fans. I am your on-air host, Sara DiVelo, and I am here with a wonderful Mighty Mystery interview with Michael Elias, here to tell us about his brand new book, You Can Go Home Now. Michael, welcome to a Mighty Blaze. Tell us about your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. My book is a thriller. I hope it thrills, and it's about a woman police officer, a homicide detective, and there are two stories. One, her past, which is her search for the murderer of her father. Mm-hmm. And the second is her work as a Long Island City police homicide detective, in which she is given cold case murders to solve or examine. And she notices that 4 of the victims' wives all have the same alibi. They were in a battered women's shelter when their husbands were murdered.
Ooh. Oh my gosh.
That's what they have in common. So to find out if the women's shelter has any connection to these murders, she goes undercover into the shelter, posing as an abused and battered woman. In the meantime, she never gives up her search for the killer of her father, who was a doctor at Planned Parenthood and was assassinated by a right-to-life fanatic. Wow. And her obsession in finding this assassin who murdered her father and destroyed her family. Her mother died, and her younger brother also, involves her obsession with revenge. She's not interested. She's only interested in finding him and killing him. Mm-hmm. And that reflects, and I was interested in our fascination as it's in our DNA, our own obsession with revenge, our heroes. When we see Denzel and Liam Neeson and Bruce Willis and Clint especially, those movies don't end in trials. They end with the bad guy being thrown out of a window or shot or whatever it is. And so they're out for kind of a personal justice, and we love that. We admire it, and yet there's the contradiction, which is we are told that is not right. It's vigilantism. The state dispenses justice, not the person, and so forth. So that's what the novel is about. And somehow, I think, or I hope artfully, I managed to bring these 2 stories together. So,
Michael, that sounds amazing. I love everything I'm hearing right now. I'm fascinated, right? Because everything you said is so true. We are fascinated by the concept of revenge, of the concept of doing it ourselves, of exacting revenge, of an eye for an eye, of getting even, of making it right. Yet we are told this is wrong. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to read this book. And thank you also for, first of all, creating a powerful female lead. I love that. And thank you for addressing this very real and very painful problem that we have about beliefs around right to life and fanatics, and taking that on with the murder of your lead character's father at a Planned Parenthood. You're addressing so many important issues. Our audience is saying this sounds so good. Yes, thank you, Laurie. I think so too. So tell us, why this book? Why now?
Well, I mean, they're just going back to, violence against women, which is basically the whole subtext of the book and the subject of the book. Violence against women's medical providers is also violence against women.
Yes. Oh, that's so well said. I'm going to tweet that later. That's a tweetable
Yeah.
because it's so true. It's so true. And thank you for addressing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there are heroes, George Tillman, and so many people who are working in this most dangerous profession of providing healthcare for women. So okay, so that's the one part of it. Well, let me get back to the question, which was
why this book? Why now?
Well, I started the book, I guess, a couple or maybe 3 years ago. And at the time, it preceded, I think, the Me Too, but there was still a lot of press, and it was in the air about the violence against women and abuse. And I think it was all coming out about the NFL and football players and athletes, and then so I got into it, and I started reading and talking to some people, and said, I think this is something I'm interested in, and I'd like to write about. But how can I write about it? Pardon the expression, as a thriller.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And then I had this. Sometimes titles come to me in a dream or dreams, and I woke up saying, "You can go home now." And I thought, who needs to be told you can go home now? And I thought, well, all right. It occurred to me that women in a shelter and their children, it also applies to refugees and exiles. So
yes.
They're sweet words, and it's a good thing to hear them when you can.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting that you said refugees, because women in shelters are refugees from their own home.
Right. And right now, because of the virus, all over the world, the women in abusive relationships are confined to their homes, and they can't get out, and they can't go. And of course, there aren't enough shelters, and so it's gotten worse, actually.
Yeah, you're so right. And I've been reading a lot of articles about that. And again, Michael, thank you for taking on all these deeply important issues in such a fascinating, readable way. Thank you. We have a question from the audience. I'm going to get to that in one quick second, but I have to share some of your incredible accolades. So, Michael, you have received a starred review from Booklist. They say, in a rousing climax, Elias, author of The Last Conquistador in 2013, deftly ties together the plot threads of Nina's personal quest and her current assignment, a compulsively readable thriller that could take Elias to another level of acclaim. What a rave review. I have to go on. Steve Martin says, Elias is so conversant with the mindset of criminals, cops, and trigger pullers, it makes me wonder about his personal life. This is a compelling thriller that has the rarest of qualities. What's going to happen next? Oh my God, amazing review from Steve Martin. Publishers Weekly says, Elias does a good job of conveying a painful reality. This is for anyone who doesn't mind their heroes acting in the gray areas to see justice done. I know I don't mind seeing my heroes in the gray area. Jessica Anya Blau says, Elias writes women like a woman. Oh my God, that is high praise. And I have to say, not many men do. So that's amazing. And he writes a police thriller like a former cop. Wow. You Can Go Home Now will keep you up at night, breathlessly turning the pages until the riveting end. I couldn't put this book down. Elias has masterfully written a moving and terrifying story that feels so potent and current. I can't believe something like this hasn't shown up in the news yet. Wow. Ellen LaCourte says, You Can Go Home Now is a thrilling examination into the power of revenge. I had several gasp out loud moments while reading. Fascinating characters and a deep dive into the gruesomeness of domestic violence infuse this page turner throughout, and there's a twist at the end that you will never see coming. Michael, wow, congratulations on all of this incredible acclaim. I'm so excited to read your book. Tell us, well, first I have so many questions, but I want to get to a question from Laurie, who's watching us right now on our Facebook page. She said, did you need to do a lot of research for this book? Yeah, tell us about your research process. Thank you, Laurie.
Well, I couldn't go into a women's shelter and they wouldn't let me in, and it's understandable. There's a lot of literature. It's accessible, a lot of articles, a lot of first-person uh, testimonies, and and then as for police procedures and all that stuff, again, research, but also I'm of the school of first make it up and then find out if it's true. So,
Oh my
and
gosh.
there's a lot of going back and seeing if it's true. Anyway, let's see what, and the other research into, yeah, and then, the internet now, I mean, to do research, it's amazing. If I want to have my character order a pizza, I can pick out a pizza place next to her, and I can download the menu and tell her and find out exactly what, Antonio's Pizza is making that day. So it's incredible. It's incredible.
It really is. That's such a great question, Laurie. Thank you for asking it. And Michael, clearly, whatever you're doing is working to get these kind of reviews, that you write Women Like a Woman, that you write police thriller like A Former Cop. Wow. I think we're all so excited to read this. So, tell us more about your writing practice. Do you rise with the sun? Do you flow effortlessly to your desk? Do the words pour out of you? Or are you sort of like Hemingway, clawing them out of your body, making your fingers raw in the process? Are you a night writer? Tell us, what's it look like, your process?
I'm an avoider. I would say that I spend as much time as possible doing things to avoid writing, and when I run out of doing those things, I am left with no choice but to sit down and write. That's a little flip, but I would say my best hours are in the afternoon. 3 to 7 is really good for me. I've never in my life awakened at 4 o'clock in the morning to write. When people say they write 8 hours a day, I say, how is that possible? My thing is to get a first draft down, no matter what. If I have to leave stuff out, if I can't think of, I just get to the end, and then the real work begins. But it's a work where you're not facing an empty page, and I don't want to say it's easy, but that's the best part. And then it never stops, because every time I look at it, I think I can make it better. And I do. I try to. Somebody says, would you send me a copy of whatever it is? I open it up and I start rewriting it before I send it to them. So I love that part. That's my favorite. And eventually, as I think Villon said, art is never finished. It's always abandoned, because at some point you have to say, that's it. And, and if I picked up this book now, I would say, ooh, I got to fix that, but it's too late. So that's my style, or that's my habit of writing. Now, I will add that my career in Hollywood, writing film and television, was for the most part collaborative. So writing in a room with somebody, or in a room with a team of writers, or whatever it is, or a writing partner, that makes it really easy, because you're bouncing back and forth. My partner, Rich Eustace, he would just sit down at the typewriter and start writing, basically from what we had planned. And then he would say, I'm out of gas, your turn. And then I would sit down at the typewriter, and we would get to the end. So writing with somebody, and I always recommend that if you are coming to Hollywood and you want to write movies, and you want to write especially comedy, you should find yourself a partner, because that's the way I think to do it.
Oh my God, Michael, I love this interview, and I love you. You're amazing. You're just dropping so many pearls of wisdom, and I think we're all just gobbling them up as fast as we can. This is amazing. I love that idea that art is never finished, it's abandoned. Thank you for that, because I think the tendency to want to keep tweaking it and polishing it and perfecting it is something that plagues me, and I know a lot of us. And thank you for saying that you're an avoider. Me too, and I always feel really guilty about that and shameful about that. So thank you for just putting it out there. I'm just soaking up every minute of this. It is balm for my soul and food for my heart. Thank you. We have another question from the audience. They want to know more about you, Michael. They want to know more about your background. So I know you were born and raised in upstate New York. You moved to New York City. You pursued a career in acting. You were a member of the Living Theater, and then eventually you transitioned to Hollywood. You wrote the screenplay for the Frisco Kids, starring Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford. You have done so many incredible things. You wrote the screenplays for Serial, Young Doctors in Love. You created Head of the Class, or a TV series for ABC. You have worked with Steve Martin, doing the screenplay for The Jerk. You wrote and directed Showtime's Lush Life with Forrest Whitaker and Jeff Goldblum. I mean, you have done so much. Tell us what are some highlights for you?
I think you named them. And again, I'm going back to, I will say that so many of the things you named, I wrote with collaborators, and that was, with the exception of Lush Life and the novels. And so I came from a rather provincial, I grew up in a rather provincial small town in the Catskills of 1,500 people. But fortunately, my parents, they love books, and they gave them to me. And that took me and my sisters out of it. This town where my father was a doctor and my mother was a school librarian. And my father's mantra was turn off the television. So I read a lot, and I wish they were alive to read mine, but that led me to New York after college. I went to St. John's College in Annapolis and studied the classics and the great books. And then I wanted to be an actor, as you said, and I acted off Broadway in the Living Theater and Judson Poets and Cafe La Mama. La Mama and Cafe Chino, all these, it was a great time to be doing that, supporting myself as a school teacher, which then came in handy when we did Head of the Class, because it was basically, based on my experience. And then I became a comedian, I guess, with a partner, and we were moderately successful and ended up on the Johnny Carson show a few times, where a producer in Hollywood saw us and called and said, "Who writes your material?" And we said, "We do." He said, "Oh, well, would you like to come to Hollywood and be comedy writers?" Yeah. We said, "What about the act?" He said, "Not interested." And that was fine. About the act. And then we just wrote variety shows. Those are the days of Glenn Campbell and Leslie Uggams, and then we went into sitcoms. And along the way, we had this idea to write a movie about a rabbi who comes to the Old West and has to make it across the country in the company of a bank robber, Harrison Ford, and that became the Frisco Kid. And then, things after that.
Oh my gosh, Michael, you have had such an incredible career. You're so amazing and so varied and have so many talents. Gail in the audience says, "What a fascinating life. Great idea for the plot of the book." She says she also remembers when The Jerk came out. I do too. I remember watching it and being in stitches. And now I can't believe I'm talking with the screenplay writer. I'm so excited and so honored. And there's so much there, that it must have been quite a shock going from a town of 1,500 to New York City, small town of 8 million.
Yeah.
And also interesting that your dad was a doctor and your main character has a dad who was a doctor at Planned Parenthood and who was murdered. Were those two things related for you?
No, my father he was a small town, a country doctor. But I set the town. I made it a neighboring town called Grahamsville, which is a real place, and used a lot of stuff about Grahamsville and I know what it's like to. And I made Nina, my character, grow up in a house that served as my father's medical office. A part of it did, and we would be having dinner and be knock on the door, and he would lead them into his medical suite and take care of them. It wasn't even a suite.
Wow.
So yeah, all that stuff came in handy. Yeah, and I wanted her to come from a small town like me.
Oh, Michael, I love this. I love this. We have another question from the audience. How does screenwriting feed or inform novel and thriller writing? I love that question. That's from my partner in crime, Jenna at the helm. Tell us about that. How does that work?
Well, I think I'm still. I was trained and wrote many screenplays, and one. There's a big difference in the screenplay. You can't tell what the character is thinking. You can't have introspection. I mean, unless you do voiceover, and I don't like voiceover. You have to advance the story through images and dialogue and action. And also you don't need to describe anything. If there's no point in describing a room, because the first thing, there's going to be an art director who's going to describe, make the room. You don't have to describe, and you can't be too specific about what people look like, because you don't want to describe you don't want to just describe Jennifer Lawrence, and it turns out that Halle Berry is going to play the part or is going to be hired. So you have to be and you can't also say how people say things. Try writing Anthony Hopkins dialogue and say, he says smilingly. He would say, excuse me, or angrily or something. So it's an entirely different thing. Then in writing a novel, I have to get rid of all of those habits, and then not actually, I don't lose them so well. And maybe that helps keep the novel going faster and more economical in a lot of ways. But that's the struggle for me to kind of abandon some of my screenwriting habits for novel habits. And screenwriters are minimalists, and novelists are maximalists.
Ooh, that is such a good point. Actually, my best friend's wife does movie trailers, and my best friend is a novelist. And so it's so funny because Charlotte, her wife, she always says she has to take a 2-hour movie and put it down to 1:30 or 2-minute trailer.
Yeah.
So she has to compress. And then Amy and I are doing the opposite. We're trying to take the seed of an idea and then make it into a 300-page book. And it's so fascinating that you have both of those skills.
Yeah.
Wow, it's zooming in and zooming out. This is so it's, my brain hurts thinking about it. It's so fascinating. We have another question. Why the transition from screenwriting to thrillers, or do you still do both?
I have screenplays that I want to see produced, but I'm not writing screenplays anymore. I'm really committed to novels and short stories, which I really love. But I think screenplays, no. The thing is, Carl Reiner once said, when you're young and stupid, you get an idea and you write it. Then when you get older, you get a good idea and you say, I don't know who's going to play it, who's going to produce it, who's going to direct it. And if you're experienced, how hard it is to get a movie going. But I don't want to say stuff in the drawer, but I have a few projects that are in various stages of development, from indifference to interest.
Michael, you're very funny and very insightful. Another question we have right here coming through is, what is, if any, is the relationship between comedy and writing? And you're so funny. Tell us about that. The thriller writing. Sorry, the relationship between comedy and thriller writing, if there is any.
Well, I think that everybody has. I mean, we don't know anybody who's sort of not funny in some way, or thinks things are funny. Look at you! You got a great laugh. You find stuff funny, and you could probably write dark thrillers. And the characters in the thrillers, some of them have senses of humor, so you have to exploit that, and they find themselves in. So I don't think there's anything that doesn't, do you think so? That, I mean, literature, anything in literature that doesn't have anything funny in it? I'd have to think. I mean, maybe it has irony or sarcasm, but I always, my character, as dark as her past is, has as oppressive her present is in many ways, and the people she's with, she still finds time to be funny and to be amusing, at least, and be amused by other people. So that's life, right?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think some people are funnier than others. You're being very modest, but you're very funny. Oh my gosh. I just cannot wait to read this book. The more I learn, the more excited I am to read this book. Michael, who are some, I mean, I think we're all learning so much from you and admiring all that you've done. Who are some writers that you admire? Whose writing do you look up to?
Well, I certainly like Jessica Anya Blau, and I like Jill Laporte, and in terms of, I like Donna Leon a lot, and I like John le Carré. I'm just saying contemporary, I don't know if it's thrillers or whatever, but mystery in that genre. I like Leonardo Padura, the Cuban novelist who writes about a Havana detective. I like him very much. Some Eastern European, Italian writers. The guy writes Montalbano.
I know I like Italian writers.
Yeah. So I read a lot, and I read, and then I have my nonfiction interests, which are mostly history. For some reason, I'm not interested in biographies too much, but I do like history. I like Russian history. I like World War II history. Probably, yeah, I'm all over the place. And I like Anthony Burgess, and I like Helen Dunmore, and I like John Grisham. And I think I have about 6 Lee Child novels under my belt. It may be enough because I don't think I have any more room on my belt, but he's amazing that he could do that. So I'm all over the place.
I love it. And what do you like about Russian history? What's the draw there?
Well, part of my family is Russian.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always probably always looking for some kind of, is it heritage? I'm not sure. And that a country should go through so many transitions and have 70 years of a kind of insanity that it did. And the characters are amazing. Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky. Yeah, and now the new Russia is extraordinary. So yeah, I'm interested in that. There's a writer who wrote about fun. Well, I'm going to skip this. Go on to the next question, please.
My college roommate was actually a Russian immigrant, and she taught me to speak Russian. So I'm the rare Italian-Irish girl who speaks pretty decent Russian.
Whoa.
But I don't know much about Russian history, so I was intrigued.
Yeah.
So Michael, how long did it take you to write this book, start to finish?
Don't know, maybe 3 years, but while I was writing it, I think I tend to do this. I'm writing something, and then I have an escape valve. Is that what it is? I have a mistress, which is another book that I'm writing, or a lover. I'm sorry, it's a lousy word. So while I was writing this one, when it got really hard, I had another one, and I went back and wrote it. So, and at the end, I sort of had 2 novels. So that's what it was. And the other one that I was writing was it was a collection of short stories, because I love the short story, and it was all with the same character. And it was all, I guess it was me. It was my stories in Hollywood, and I fictionalized them so I could tell the truth.
Ooh, tasty. I
And
can't
it's
wait.
yeah, it's about a Hollywood writer. And then I put them all together while I was doing You Can Go Home Now. And I would add one and take one and fix it up. And I would, and then I found a way to make a novel out of it, those stories. So that's, but I would say probably 3 or 4 years. And then there was the time of finishing it and trying to get it published. Does that count? That was
Yes.
a year and a half or 2 years. Yeah, that was a tough one.
Michael, now I think everyone is clamoring to know, what is the Mistress novel? We would like to know, they say. Tell us
Oh,
about
it's
the
called
Mistress.
yeah, it's called a Hollywood love story, and it's about a writer who he's sort of a he's again it's modeled, I suppose, on me. But it's a writer who tells his stories, his adventures in Hollywood. He's a kind of, I mean, you can say Larry David, but not neurotic like him, and also much more political. So he gets involved in anti-war, the anti-war movement. He gets involved in this. What else? It's the rise of CAA and Mike Ovitz. It's the transition from the AIDS panic. It's a lot of stuff, and he's a vampire in the sense that he doesn't age, even though the years of the novel go over 30 years, and he always stays the same. So he can have these adventures and always be the perfect age.
I love it. So is the Mistress published as well? Is it out now?
No, it's waiting to be. I think I'm just I'm doing another one, another thriller at the moment.
So is this now the Mistress of the Mistress?
Yes.
Okay, Michael, we need you
We don't
to
want to use
share
that.
your
I don't want to use
Mistress.
that word. I retract that word, please.
Okay, we need this short story collection, formerly The Mistress, now The Main Squeeze. We need to know, because now we know it's a true story. Everybody at A Mighty Blaze, you heard it here first. Everyone who's watching, you heard it here first. Michael's fictional short story collection about the writer in Hollywood is actually totally true. So I think we cannot wait to get our little mitts on this book.
Right.
We're
There's
so
one
excited.
story, although there's one story or chapter where he goes back in time and he meets Marilyn Monroe and falls in love with her before she's a movie star.
So we can assume that is the one that is not true.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, I think this is fantastic. Do you have a favorite short story writer?
Well, I would have to say F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote the Pat Hobby stories that I modeled these on. Then I would say John Cheever, and who else do I like? Short stories. John O'Hara. I guess that's that generation. Who else? I don't know. That's it for now.
Gail in our audience, I think, is echoing all of our thoughts, saying, I hope it gets published, as I would love to read a Hollywood love story. Gail, you are all of us. We cannot wait to read this book. This is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. The title, you said that it arrived to you in a dream. Tell us more. So before we went live, John was sharing that he's actually a yogi, as am I, a yoga teacher. And so tell us about this dream that came to you and gave you this title.
I don't know the dream. I just know I woke up with the words, "You can go home now." Then I once had a dream where I was in Peru and I dreamed about Incas, and I said and I had come back from Peru, and that's what gave me the idea of writing about an Inca city that's alive. So yeah, we have to, I mean, dreams are great. I don't keep a notebook. I look forward to them, and if I'm lucky, I remember them. And there's always something good, because after all, we create our dreams, right? We're the movies we make in our at night in our head, and we have to cast them and write the screenplay of them and see what happens. So I came out with the title. You can go. No.
You are the first person I've interviewed who said their title, and I always ask about the title because I'm fascinated by titles. You are the first person that has told me it came to them in a dream. I love this. This is so cool. This is just, I absolutely love this. This is fascinating. So Michael, what is some of the best writing advice that you have learned that you can share with us? We have a lot of writers in the audience. What are some of the best writing advice you have gotten? And also, have you gotten any that was the worst and you just think that people should disregard it?
Okay. I think, by the way, I think there's a chapter in the book where Nina, the heroine, has to make up a life, and she asks a writer to help her with it. But you have to read that in the book. I would say, try to get as much of a first draft as possible and then go to work. Do not write meticulously and make sure the first page is perfect and every sentence is perfect. I would just keep going and get it all down as fast as possible, and then go back and start the real work. The second thing is memory is more important than inspiration or creativity. When I think, for me, it is to remember characteristics, conversations, faces, stories, collect stories that people tell you, and steal them, and steal people's lives that whom you know. So you can. That's all your. That's your memory bank, and that's to be used when you write. And I think when people say, that Chestnut, write what you know, it's not as much write what you know, but try to write. If once you get your story and stuff, try to mine that your memory bank, and that will help you. And another thing is, listen to conversations, become an eavesdropper, and listen, and let's see what else. And then find the time that's best for you to write. And and one other thing, get a job so that your writing time becomes more precious and valuable. If you have, and also it's very hard to make any money in this as a writer, especially as a novelist, which I'm finding out. But it's really important to have something that you can fall back on or keep you alive, because otherwise you're writing to make money, and you should write to write, and later on worry about the money. Somebody once said, when you're writing, it's all about the art, and when you finished, it's all about the money. And so, I mean, Hemingway had jobs. They were journalists in those days. He was a reporter, and that's what they did. Or they sold short stories to magazines. And there are so many writers who are lawyers. And so anyway, that's the thing is, and that'll make your writing time more valuable, and you'll take it more seriously. The worst thing you can do is have too much time to write.
Oh my gosh, Michael, this is amazing. This is so invaluable. And it's so true. And even actually, now that I'm thinking about it, F. Scott Fitzgerald sold episodic stories to newspapers. And so everyone's got to hustle. And actually, Hemingway was often a war correspondent as well.
That's right. He was a journalist and a war correspondent. And he did get lucky in his second marriage. She had a lot of money.
So that's a backup plan.
Yeah, that was a backup for him. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Michael, this is amazing. I feel like I've been talking to you for 5 minutes because this has been, I feel like I just got an MFA in 41 minutes. You are so brilliant and so insightful and so helpful and so humble and so fascinating. And I just absolutely adore you. This has been so amazing and so enriching. I just want to ask you 3 lightning round questions. Would you rather take a road trip with Bram Stoker or Anne Rice?
Oh, Anne Rice in a minute.
Would you rather be stuck in Area 54 with H.P. Lovecraft or Stephen King?
Uh, I'd be anywhere with Stephen King.
Okay, exactly. Even Area 54.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you rather, as a sleepaway camp roommate, would you rather have Arthur Conan Doyle or Edgar Allan Poe?
I guess, well, I think I'd take Arthur Conan Doyle. I don't know if he'd like me, but I would take him.
Michael Elias, he would like you because everyone likes you. You're so charming. This has been so incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in our audience for all of the wonderful questions. Thank you to my partner in crime, Jenna Blum, who is a genius. And thank you for your wonderful time. I cannot wait to read your book, and I cannot wait to have you back when your Mistress is published. Will you come back and talk to us about that one and the next thriller?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Oh, yeah.
Coming
Yeah,
back.
great.
What's the date?
Okay.
Everyone, we are linking to Michael's books in the comments, and you can support independent bookstores by buying through bookshop.org. So support indies. We love indies. We love Michael. So go buy his fabulous new thriller with the incredible praise, starred review from Booklist, and support independent bookstores. We will see you next time. Thank you so much.